commanding the cities of Judah to sacrifice cities by city.
What?
Verse 52. Then many of the people were gathered unto them, to wit every one that forsook the law, and so they committed evils in the land, and drove the Israelites into secret places.
So it says they drove the Israelites into secret places. Okay? So based on this, all the people who wanted to continue to follow the Most High, they started fleeing out of the land. Okay? They started fleeing out of Jerusalem. What?
Even wheresoever they could flee for secure.
So it says anywhere that they could flee for secure, or to be secure. Okay? So by us teaching that people must flee, okay, from Babylon and flee from the Western world societies, okay, that's nothing different than what our people did in past times. Anytime the Grecians or the Romans or any nation was attempting to set up a construct which would eventually destroy our people, those who wanted to continue to follow the Most High had to flee into secret places. Okay? Because if they didn't flee into secret places, what would happen is the Gentiles would eventually have us killed off and exterminated. Okay, go ahead.
Verse 54. Now the 15th day of the month, Caselu, in the 145th year, they set up the desolation upon the altar.
And it says they set up the what?
They set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar.
And it says they set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar. Okay? Now, as you can see, before the abomination of desolation was set up, all these things had to take place. All these things had to transpire first. Okay? Our people being forced not to worship after the ways of the Most High, not being able to follow the laws. Okay? Our people being persuaded into following the ways of the heathen, the Gentiles. Our people having to flee. Okay? All these things happened, which transpired into the abomination of desolation being set up. Okay? Go ahead.
And built the idol altars throughout the cities of Judah on every side, and burnt incense at the doors of their houses and in the streets. And when they had rent in pieces the books of the law which they found, they burnt them with fire.
So it says when they found the books of the law, they started tearing them to pieces and burning them with fire. Okay? That's another part. That's another brick when it comes to building the abomination of desolation. Okay? And just a few years ago, you had the Pope who stated that the Bible is no longer relevant. Okay? So now if the religious leader of this earth is stating that the Bible is no longer relevant and that our records are no longer relevant, what do you think they're going to start doing with our records when the time comes? Okay? They already have a lot of our records hidden within their certain libraries and certain places where they have a lot of our records hidden. Okay? But when the time comes, they're going to start taking these books and taking these records and burning them and destroying them. Okay? It's going to be illegal to be found with these particular records. Go ahead.
Verse 57. And wheresoever was found with any the book of the testimony, or of any consented to the law, the king's commandment was that they should put him to death.
So anyone who tried to consent to the law and follow the Heavenly Father's law was put to death. Go ahead.
Thus did they by their
and that's part of the abomination of desolation. Okay? So that's why we tell a lot of brothers and sisters to be careful on how you interact with people, how you share the truth with certain people, because soon a lot of these people, like Christ said, the people of your household are going to become your enemies. And when the time comes, when it goes out that it's against the law to follow certain practices, when it's against the law to read certain records and deal with certain records, your people are going to be giving you up, okay, over to the law. And we cover this almost every week. Okay? So you have to be very, very careful how you interact. Okay? Go ahead.
Thus did they by their authority unto the Israelites every month.
So it says every month they did this. They came throughout Jerusalem and started destroying our people, destroying our records. Go ahead.
To as many as were found in the cities. Now the 25th day of the month, they did sacrifice upon the altar, the idol altar, which was upon the altar of the Most High. At which time, according to the commandment, they put to death certain women that had caused their children to be circumcised.
So the sisters who caused their children to be circumcised were put to death also. Okay, so it was illegal to have your child circumcised. All right, and I don't know about in the States, but I know in the UK, it's basically you basically have to go through a lot of red tape to get your child circumcised. Okay, you got to go through a lot of red tape just to get your child circumcised. All right, and we're showing you here the origin of all this. What's going to happen? Some of the things that are going to be taking place when the abomination of desolation is set up. Okay, by you being circumcised, it's a possibility that you are actually one of those people who follow the laws of the Most High. Okay, and that's the reason why they had the people. When you read the book of Josephus, it tells you that the reason why the people had to perform naked within the gymnasiums is because this allowed, the Grecians to see whether you were circumcised or not. Okay, this allowed them to see whether you were circumcised or not. If you were circumcised, you were not allowed to partake. So in order to be able to be a part of their rituals, their customs, their sports, you had to follow after their practices and go uncircumcised. Okay? Go ahead.
Verse 61. And they hanged their infants about their necks, and refilled their houses.
And they did what? They hanged the child's how?
And they hanged their infants about their necks.
So it says they hanged the infants about their necks. Okay? So not only were the women who, or the sisters who tried to get their children circumcised or did have their children circumcised, not only were they killed, but the babies also were lynched. Okay? So you think lynching is a new practice, but this is something that was done under the Grecian Empire. Okay? To the babies who were circumcised. Go ahead.
And refilled their houses, and slew them that had circumcised them. Howbeit many in Israel were fully resulted and confirmed in themselves, not to eat any unclean thing. Wherefore they chose rather to die.
So you had a lot of our people who are choosing rather to die than to eat the unclean meats of the Grecians. Okay, to eat the swine's flesh and all those different things. Okay, so now you have a lot of our people today who ask the question of, in what situation are you allowed to eat those things? Like, say if we're in a situation, we may be in the wilderness or we may be stranded, and we may have to, eat swine's flesh. Okay, or eat something abominable. Do we eat it just so we can live another day, or what do we do? But according to the book of Maccabees, our people would rather die. They would rather starve to death than to eat the abominations of the Grecians. Okay, go ahead.
Wherefore they chose rather to die, that they might not be defiled with meats.
So it says they chose rather to die rather than to be defiled with meats. And you see examples of this in the book of 2 Maccabees. Okay, with the woman and her 7 children, her 7 sons, who refused to eat pork. Okay, and that shows you the mindset of our sisters in past times, because today you put some sisters in that situation, they may tell their child to eat it just so they can live. But this sister told her sons to be courageous, okay, and not to sell out their people by eating the swine's flesh. So our sons refused and they all died. They all were murdered. Okay. Another thing happened with Eleazar, which was an elder over the nation of Israel. Okay, and a well-aged man. He was of great influence. And the Grecians tried to get him to eat pork, but he refused to. Then they told him that we'll bring out a clean meat. And if what we'll do is we'll set up a little, situation in which, we'll give you some beef or some clean meat, and you'll eat that. But then, when you're in front of the people, you'll tell the people that you were eating pork. Okay? So they wanted him to try to pull off a trick on the people to make the people think that he was eating pork, when in reality, he was eating a clean meat. But he told them that, listen, I'm not going to go for that either. And once again, that shows you the mindset of our people today, because some of our people may say, well, hey, it's not pork. Let me go ahead and eat it and just tell the people that I was eating pork. But he understood that if he did it, based on his influence over the people, that the people would start to now follow after his practices. He said that, listen, I would rather die in my old age being recognized for my wisdom than to be one, who is considered throughout history as one who got in his old age and forsook the laws of the Most High. So that's the route he took, and he eventually was put to death also. Okay? Go ahead. So these are all the things our people went through under the hands of the Grecian Empire. Go ahead.
And that they might not profane the holy covenant. So then they died. And there was a very great wrath upon Israel.
All right. Is that it? All right. Now, when you read on in the books of Maccabees, it talks about Mattathias. Okay, he was the patriarch of the Hasmonean dynasty, or the Hasmonean family. Okay, and they were responsible for restoring righteousness within the nation of Israel during this time period. Okay, you had Mattathias and his sons. You had John. As a matter of fact, let me get the record to show you the names of his sons. Okay, this is the Cambridge Annotated Apocrypha. Okay, and when you go into the back of the Cambridge Annotated Apocrypha, it shows you the lineage of the Hasmonean family. Okay. So here you got at the top, if you all can see it, you got Mattathias, okay? And he's the patriarch of the Hasmonean dynasty, okay? Over here you got John, okay, which is one of his sons, okay? Then you got Simon, okay, Shemaiah. Then you got Judah, or Judas, which is Jehoiada, okay, the water. Okay, and he was called Maccabees. That's where you get the name Maccabees from Judas Maccabees. And what Maccabees means, Maccabees is a Greek word which means hammerhead. Okay, when you do the research. And it's because Judas Maccabees, when he was warring against the Greeks, he was famous as to how he was taken down and warring against the Greeks. Okay, he was fighting against the Greeks with so much power and so much force that they called him Judas Maccabees, or Judas the hammerhead. Okay, that's what Maccabees mean. Okay, then you got Eliezer. Okay, Eliezer, and then you got Jonathan. Okay, out of Simon you can see came John Hyrcanus, the first who was responsible for converting the Idumeans into so-called Judaism. But that's another lesson for another day. But as you can see, it was Mattathias and his 5 sons who were responsible for sparking the revolt against the Hellenization of Jerusalem. Okay? And they pushed the Grecians, they pushed Antiochus Epiphanes and the Grecian powers out of the land of Jerusalem. Okay? And they continued to fight all the way until their death. They continued fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting to protect their people. And it came to a point when anytime they heard about their people being mistreated by the Grecians, they would go to war with the Grecians and destroy the Grecians totally and send them running out of Jerusalem. Okay, so that's how powerful they were. And even though we don't have that today, we don't have those particular forms of which we'll call warriors today, who are willing to do it in that physical strength. What the Most High did do is he raised up teachers to first get our people spiritually and mentally ready. Okay, but eventually you will see some of the things you've seen during the time of Maccabees, with Judas Maccabees and his 4 brothers and his father. Okay, so there's more, but that pretty much concludes. We are up. That's our time for today's class. So what I wanted to do today, basically with that lesson, is show you all the steps that it takes in order to build the abomination of desolation, and all the things that go into the abomination of desolation. Okay, it's not just one event in history. Okay, it's a number of events that happen time after time after time when they get us in an area and they try to take us over and exterminate us. Okay. That's what the abomination of desolation is, and soon the abomination of desolation is going to take place again. It happened during the time of Antiochus Epiphanes, it happened during 70 AD, and it's going to happen in the near future. Okay?